Hi, my name is Lila Crow and I'm the Executive Director of the Itasca County Historical Society, and we welcome you to join with us today on telling another story that we have. Anybody that grew up here in the Grand Rapids area, this story is going to bring back really fond memories for you. It is the Kremer story. But in order to tell that story, I need to take you way back in history so that we can start at the very beginning. When the Kremer family had first arrived in Grand Rapids, it was 1891. That was our anniversary. And when George arrived in Grand Rapids with his family, he got heavily involved right away in what we consider the politics of the town. He served twice as mayor. He did a lot of work, you could say, in development of Grand Rapids, and he loved business. So he joined a couple other businessmen, and his first office was in the Pekegama Hotel. And of course, all of us didn't realize there was offices in Pekegama Hotel. We knew there was a restaurant, we knew there was a bar, but we found out there was some offices there that gentlemen used to do their business. And in 1900, he opened his first, what we consider, Kremer store. If you think about Grand Rapids right now, in this age, in 2014, that would be located where the New China restaurant is. The old mill building is what some people consider it. That was where he started his first business. He was relatively new in what he wanted to do, except that he knew it had to do with furniture. So he opened up his store in 1900, had a beautiful ad with that store. It was what we would consider kind of an invitational. Today would be like a grand opening. To him, it was a little bit sophisticated. He opened it up in June, and he kind of, made it, I sell elegant furniture. He was, I would consider, more of an sophistication, might be what Mr. Kremer started out with. He worked with many of the leaders in town, like Mr. King in the lumber industry. He has served as political, well respected as the mayor, and in opening this business, you'll see in his ad that he also put in the blend. Well, at that time it was Itasca Mill, or the Itasca. So when he opened his store in 1900 with his ad from what we found in the Grand Rapids Herald Review, at that time he knew that the Grand Rapids was really going to develop. And it opened up with the Grand Rapids Water, Power, and Boom Company, which now we know became Itasca Paper Company, which became Bland and Paper Company. But he knew that this town was going to be progressive. So he built that, or his business, he built up a block away from where the mill was. Now, he was pretty progressive. He didn't stay there very long. He then moved to what we consider in today, 2014, where the conjoined highways 169 and Highway 2, a few years back it was called Nordby Drug Company. And in our pictures that we have, the first Kremer building was right there where it became Nordby Drug Company later. In this picture you can see Central School behind. It's located, if you look on the far right corner, there's the Central School. In the windows there, now he's starting to get away from a lot of the furniture part. At this time he took over, Mr. Libby joined with him. He had a mortuary in this building. The buggies that you look at in the window, he's getting more into personal dry goods, you could say. So during that time, he was being very progressive. He was right downtown, right close to the school. A lot of people went by his building every single day. You see the kids that are sitting out in the front. So as we go through some of these pictures, you're going to say, oh, this is really neat, all these people and things that are going on. Now, in 1900, also, we had Pekegama Hotel. The Hotel Gladstone was built where Kremer building would be, as you remember it, whereas now we call it the Kremer parking lot. Hotel Gladstone, we're going to show you some pictures. It was a very sophisticated hotel. It was very large. If you look at it, it was 3 floors, the same as Pekegama Hotel. Actually, I think it was a little bit taller because they were competitive. This is a picture of the back of Hotel Gladstone. You look and see as you can see, the parking went around. It was dirt behind. The roads are very clean. There's Central School, all right there in that vicinity. This here picture was taken from the Central School grounds. So now you're looking at kind of the side view of Hotel Gladstone, and of course the church that was right there in the corner, that was a Presbyterian's first church. So if you were to think of it as today, it is where the McGrosty Art Gallery, the stained glass shop, that is where that church was. Now, if you look at the lady that's standing there, that's early 1900 clothing. I would say kind of sophisticated because she was even wearing gloves. So I'm assuming that she was dressed up for something, if you look at just the way that is. Well, in 1908, sad news for Hotel Gladstone, it burned down. Now this is the mystery that we have and that we talk about here at the Historical Society. We have some people that tell us one story and others that tell us another story. So I'm going to tell you the story first and then let you know that there was 2 buildings that burned down in the same place. So the firemen got out. As you look at this picture, it's all burned. When it burned, there was nothing left of Hotel Gladstone. And here's actually even a picture of a postcard that was sent, and you'll see the snow. The building did stay there quite a while before it was completely destroyed down. But the firemen were called to the fire, and the fire hose was someplace where the Herald Review is today, was where the hydrant was, and the firemen came and hooked up their hoses, and they had the hoses going across the railroad track to put out the fire at Hotel Gladstone. And a train went by and cut all the hoses. Now that's one story. The other story was when Hotel Gladstone burned down, then Mr. Kremer purchased that property and built this building, which a lot of people go, oh, that's a Kremer building. But if you look very closely at it, it's actually not. The pillars are a little bit different. The windows are shaped a little bit different. This building only existed for 3 years and it burned down. So the other story was that when the Kremer building burnt down, that's when the fire hoses were cut off. So, and this building was built right after Gladstone burned down, and he built up the building, and within 3 years after it burned down, then he built what is today we consider the Kremer building. And as you look at this picture, it was awesome. Look at those old cars. And it was beautifully decorated. Oh, Mr. Kremer, he was really involved in everything that happened with this building. Upstairs, there was offices. The mortuary was upstairs. And, of course, a big, huge sign right there at the top. You'll see that. The church building across the street is still there. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened in that building. It became... What we found out is it was similar to the old-fashioned grocery stores where you walked in the door and you told them what you were looking for, and people would scurry around and get your items and bring it back up. Or they had an old crank, you would see the old crank cash registers were involved in there. It was not what we consider at the very end that Kremer's, where you could wander through the whole store and you had 2 doorways in it. When Kremer first started, you had to tell them what you wanted. This was a very old-fashioned Kremer's. Now, throughout this program that we have today, there's going to be some pictures that have never been published, that people have never seen, others that were published in the Grand Rapids Herald Review. And of course, if you were back in the early days, in the 50s and 60s, Santa was the main reason for Kremer's in a child's eyes. If you look at this Santa, I personally have never seen a Santa like this Santa. So I think that people back then, it was really a privilege. His book was huge. And when you stood there and told Santa what you wanted, look at that book. It's huge. He would write down what you wanted for Christmas. Well, of course it made it easy then because it was all documented. Parents loved it. Then they could go and read in the book to see what you wanted, and Kremer loved it because then you'd buy it. So it was very much for them a marketing tool, which people didn't believe in marketing back then, but in everything that we see, they were wonderful marketers back then. Now, we're going to show you different eras in Kremer's. This here happens to be in 1949. If you look at the pictures, this is the windows from the outside, the goods that were in the windows that they displayed, material, dresses, kitchen works. When Mr. Kremer passed away, Mr. Kurtz took over. Oh, here's another Santa picture. Isn't that just cute? All those faces, just look at their faces. They're just in joy, and he's sitting there diligently writing down each thing that they wanted. This is in 1949, and the only one that we have identified in this picture is Danny Holman. So if you recognize yourself, or if you recognize somebody in these pictures, oh, make sure you get a hold of Historical Society, because we love to document each and every one of our pictures. This one here was never published. 1949. It did not get in the Herald Review, but all those faces, they're all looking up at you. He's got toys sitting there. And look at Rudolph up there in the corner. It's so much fun. Oh, no, it's not Rudolph, it's Dasher. Oh, Dasher's up there instead of Rudolph. Can you believe that? Anyway, you'll have to look at that picture, look at it really close. You'll love that one. So in 1950, they celebrated their 50th anniversary. And this one here is E.J. Kremer and Walter Kurtz. And Kurtz did take over and ran a lot of these pictures. We don't have identification, but they actually were taken inside of Kremer's. So Walter helped them out in a lot of ways during that time. When he took over management of Kremer's, he made some big changes. When Mr. Kremer's was there, everything was riding along. He was getting older. If you kind of put yourself back in that time frame, what was going on, they'd gone through the First World War, and now it was coming to a little bit more of freedom to do a lot more advertising. And what they wanted to do in Kremer's, some people, you know, it's like old school, you could say. But when Mr. Kurtz took over, he did a lot of changes. And he was the one that changed the counter, which we remember our Sloppy Joes. He changed the design of the inside of Kremer's. He did a lot of what we could say updating of Kremer's, from the old to the new. He took out all of that you did your service by, and Jack Freeman then came on board, and when Jack came in, they took the side entrance on the Highway 2 side doorway out and put it in the back. You'll notice changes that you then could walk from the front of the store all the way to the back of the store. And Jack Freeman, he knew what he was doing when he did that, because he knew that as you started shopping, and what I consider it today is the big huge box stores that we have, he saw that in the future. Jack Freeman, when he looked at Kremer's, he saw what was happening, and so he made big huge changes too. So he went from Kurtz to walking in the door, telling people what you wanted, to Jack Freeman that really changed that part of it. This picture here is in 1950. They celebrated their 50th anniversary, and that year the girls that were graduating got a box, a little chest from Kremer's. Now that was another one of those marketing tools that was awesome. And these girls, we did get identified, and what would be so neat is if we could find one of those boxes so that we could tell that story of those boxes. Kremer's in 1951 held their first fashion show. Now when we got these pictures, it was so cute, because can you imagine these clothes back then? I mean, they did swimsuits. It was in the spring, so of course they want to advertise what was coming up. And they used a lot of children, because if you knew the Kremer's children clothes part, that was pretty much the only store in town that you could get your kids' clothes. So their fashion show, when you see these pictures and look at them, they were just adorable. All the little kids that got to do the fashion show, and of course we have no identification. So if you were one of them, now this was back in 1951, so, and we're at 2014. You might even recognize it as being your mom or dad. Let's put it that way. So if you do, let us know, because that's awesome. And it helps us in identifying. 1952, that is when all the major changes were done. One of the things that Jack Freeman did was he took the offices from the second floor and he put the material up there. And of course, all of us remember that was the material shop to go and get your material. Go up on second floor, and just vast amounts. I remember starting when I was little and walking up there and just seeing all those bolts of material. It was overwhelming. There was so many. And of course, Jack knew that. So when he did that on second floor, his job was to get the women to go up to the second floor. So in doing that, when he put the material up there, he changed the stairway around, so it's easier for women to do that. He also, in 1970, made some major changes again to Kremer's, put in an elevator. Oh my goodness, I remember that elevator. First time ever in an elevator was at Kremer's. And I'm sure you're going to remember that too. So when you're looking and thinking, first time elevator was in 1970, oh my, we use elevators today like it's no hat. Now, looking at the inside, a lot of these were never ever published. They took a lot of pictures to advertise, do different marketing skills, and as I look at them, I remember that each section, it was a department store because they took pictures of each section. Here's the candy department. Oh my, you don't even see this today. But every kind of candy you can possibly imagine was in that counter. And of course they bagged it all, weighed it, it was all done right there. And the girls that worked there, I believe at this time there's like 5 different ones that worked just at the food counter. And then of course the candy counter. It was made into long skinny aisles. I remember doing that when I was little, just overwhelmed with everything that was there. And toy section was huge. If you look, here's the hardware. Look at all those items. They're going to slowly put these pictures on so that you can have a really good view of these pictures that have never been published. So you can just kind of look at that. Now, this picture is kind of startling to me because I don't ever remember this. The Goodyear Itasca Tire Company was in the parking lot of Kremer's. I only knew it as a parking lot. But the other day I was at Atchison Tire and I looked up and here's this clock on the wall. And it said Itasca Tire Company. I'm like, well, it's not Atchison. So I went back to the Historical Society and punched in Itasca Tire Company and it said, well, you have this in your Kremer display. And I'm like, my Kremer display? Went back to it, here it is. This was the parking lot that I always knew. It was a Goodyear Itasca Tire Company. It's absolutely beautiful. Big, huge building. This is 1950, and the only thing that I know of that exists today from there is that clock on Atchison Wall. So, I'm sorry, all I have is pictures and that clock. But it was a beautiful big building. This here was the front, Ben Franklin. It's on the building, Kremer's on the side. In the back, you still see the Itasca Tire Company. This is 1953. 1954, oh, we have some awesome slides. But Kremer's always had a float in the parade. Of course, you know, we always had a parade. The Potato Festival, oh, always had a parade. This float is the cutest thing in the world. It really, I would say that the people standing, oh, there's lots of people, and the same thing happens today that happened back then. The kids are running out in the street to get the candy. And of course, Kremer had to give out a lot of candy. But the people lined up, and it has a boat on top of that truck. And it says, you have to look at it closely, vacation. So if you're on vacation, that was his marketing tool to get you to come into Kremer's. Isn't that just the coolest thing? And of course behind is Grand Rapids Herald Review. And if you're looking at this picture and trying to figure out where it's located, the Herald Review building is what we would call today that big North Print building at the northeast juncture of Highway 2 and Pekegama Avenue. You see a little bit of the Libby Funeral Home up in the upper left corner. Redding's Cafe, the Standard gas station was there on that corner for many, many years. Beautiful gas station. A lot of people tell me they just remember the Coke machine outside the Standard station. Kind of brings back memories there. Oh boy, this is the famous Kremer fountain. It was awesome. Kremer's, I mean, even today in our new cookbook from the Historical Society, we have the Kremer Sloppy Joe recipe. And everybody tells me, well, it's just not the same. Well, I have to tell people, back then, at that Kremer counter, you know, the hot dogs, I always remember the popcorn machine, but the Sloppy Joe always brought back memories. But they made their meat, I would say, in our standards today, a little bit unhealthy. They never took any of the oil off. So a lot of people, they make the meat and they drain off all the oil, they mix up the vegetables and put it in there, and they say, well, it's just, it doesn't have the same flavor. I said, well, I don't think we'll ever get that flavor back again because of that. The grease is still there, and today that taste would be a little bit different to our taste that we have. So I just tell people it was a memorable Sloppy Joe, that just keep that memory alive in your heart, because we try. We definitely try. But I always tell people, leave the grease in there, and they all look at you and go, you gotta be kidding. So it's up to you what you want to do to try that taste. But in looking at that counter and sitting up on that, if you went to the dentist, you were always brought here to have ice cream, a shake, or something. If you were really good in town, I often would hear parents say, I always took them there for a treat. That was the place to go to. So that picture will bring back really good memories. Toys, oh my goodness, can you imagine all those toys? Every kind of truck. And you know what the hard part was? Parents tell me all the time was getting their kids out of Kremer's. Sometimes they didn't want to go to Kremer's because it took forever to get them out. And I just remember hearing screaming kids. So yeah, pull them away from all those toys. Dolls, this was my section. I just sit there and look at them. It's just like, oh, look at all those dolls. But isn't that pretty? It's a really good, simple display. Today they're not, you know, they're all in boxes. Back then it was leave the doll out so that the little girl would touch it and then couldn't resist and buy it. So they all had those marketing things. Kitchenware. Oh, look at that. All those big mixers, all the different kind of coffee pots. Of course, you don't see those kind today. They made the best coffee too. Look. Oh, here's another one of that candy counter. This was a little bit later, a different view. If you look at the decorations that they had all over, the candy counter kind of grew a little bit. You'll see it's a little bit higher. I wonder why. Oh, different styles. Clothing. Isn't that neat? Look at that clothing. It was very fashionable to shop at Kremer's. Furniture. You know, he started out with furniture, and look at there. He sold furniture. I don't remember this part as much in Kremer's. To me, it wasn't the furniture place. It was more of, well, kids, you know, toys, and but he did have a lot of furniture. This, I remember the lamps, the musical instruments, the radios. Of course, he had to have TVs because they were right into that. 1956, the interior. You'll see each, and as you look at those pictures, the different styles of the lettering, it just brings back such good memories. The tool shop. Now we're on the outside of the building again. If you look over on the left-hand side, that is where we had the Red Owl store. They had a granary over there that was there for a while. We had 2 granaries here in town. A lot of people don't realize that because they disappeared and never came back. And for Grand Rapids to have a granary, to them that just didn't exist. But yes, we did. General Mills had a granary here, and the trains would go by and the big trucks that were coming in. I like to show the different styles of what Ben Franklin, in the very big letters out front, changed in the Kremer building over time. If you look on the right side, it advertised the Budget Host. Motel was advertised right there as tourists were coming in from the west side of town. 60th anniversary, we tried to figure out where this picture was taken from, and we do have all the names of the people. So if you look there, the one name that kind of pops out all the time to me is Millie Mandich. Now, Millie, she was one that worked in the mines during the war, and here she worked at Kremer's too. So as you look at those names, they'll bring back fond memories, and look at their faces. These were the people that you saw all the time at Kremer's. Another picture, this one here, the tire company has gone behind. They now have parking in the back. The doorway goes through to the back. This is the side view that I always remember, the big Kremer sign on the side of the building. And when it was finally auctioned off, 3 Kremer signs were put in that auction. In the auction bid, you'll see that. This is really neat. When I was talking about the material going on the 2nd floor, this picture was put in the Herald Review, and they did a whole remodel on the 2nd floor. So you'll look, this is kind of cool. You see that big, huge truck? No cars coming by the highway, so I'm assuming that they had to take the picture between. And then, of course, the Kremer's there on the side. This was really neat to have the freight coming in the front door. Big truck moved right up to the front door. And Century, of course, was here for many, many, many years. And we were always asked to get a picture of the Century truck. We got one now. No, actually, we found several of them, which is really neat, because that family has always said, there's some Century truck pictures out there somewhere, and sure enough, we found them. And then the Kremer's parking lot, they now owned almost half of that block. So they purchased, when the tire company was gone, they purchased that property for their parking, so that makes sure that all their customers could park really close to their building. See all those cars, isn't that cool? And of course the stoplight there no longer exists. They took that one out a few years back, and then when the mall was built across from Kremer's, that is when a lot of people said was the demise of Kremer's. I don't know. To me, a lot of factors are in. So many people miss Kremer's, they miss shopping, they miss that building, and then when it was brought that it was going to be torn down, a lot of people were unhappy. The Kremer girls, this picture, there's 19 of them that got together and had their picture taken in front of Kremer's. They actually still meet for lunch, and I was told that they meet once a month, which to me there's not a whole lot of them left, but for them to still meet, that really brings back really good memories. So the Kremer girls, this here was published in the Herald Review to show them in their coats out in the cold. Kremer's was auctioned off, and in their auction bill, a lot of people, you'll see this, it just brings back memory of the horse. Oh, everybody got to ride the horse. The scale, you put your penny in there and it told you, your horse, no, it told you for the day. And then in December of the year 2000, it took 4 hours. It started early in the morning, the destruction of the Kremer building. It was gone by 8 o'clock. A lot of people stood across in the Herald Review parking lot and watched the building being taken down. We actually have a couple of bricks from the Kremer building that people have donated to us. It was one of those memories that was really hard for a lot of people to take. And I think from that, you know, we have change. We have buildings that have disappeared. We keep memories. This is interesting. This is the obituary that the Herald Review published, and it was down after 93 years in business. It would have been 100 years old when it was torn down, and the last part is probably the best phrase. The Kremer's building is survived by the nostalgic members of this community who will cherish their memories of a business and a building that was held dear in their hearts. Other survivors are the Kremer's ladies, which we talked about, sales clerks who spent years loyally serving the store and the community, who had hoped to raise the money needed to save the building from its impending death, which they were unable to do that. Memorial service, private and in the hearts of many. Burial, Itasca County landfill, which is, they wanted to use just a touch of humor because it was so hard for everybody. So if you have memories of Kremer's, we would really like to share your stories with others. If you saw a picture in here and you knew who they were, or if they were you, to give us a call, that would be really much appreciated. We really like to document everything we have. And if you know which building, the Hotel Gladstone or the original Kremer building that was burned down and the fire hoses got cut, if you definitely know that story, please let us know, because we would like to document that and solve that little mystery that's here at the Itasca County Historical Society. Thank you again. Have a great day.